Hello again, and welcome to Broadcasting Scotland. It's Monday the 28th of August. I'm Andrew Wilson, and this is Scotland at 7. This evening, I have the latest daily update from Ukraine on day 551 of the illegal Russian war of aggression and imperial ambition, and then I will take a look at today's headlines from Scotland and around the world. At the end of the programme, we have a number of videos shot at the SNP's conference in Dumfries over the weekend for you to enjoy. Poland and the Baltic states will close their borders with Belarus entirely if a critical incident involving Wagner mercenaries takes place, the Polish Interior Minister, Mariusz Kaminski, said today. Ukraine said today that its troops had liberated the southeastern settlement of Robotyne and were trying to advance further south in their counter-offensive against Russian forces. 3 people were killed in an overnight Russian missile strike on Ukraine, and a 4th was killed in shelling this morning, Ukrainian officials have said. A Russian-born Swedish citizen is reported to have been charged with collecting information for Russian military intelligence service, the GRU, for almost a decade. Russia has claimed its air defences have downed 2 Ukrainian drones over Russian-annexed Crimea today. Moscow said today it had detained a Russian citizen and a former US consulate employee in Vladivostok for allegedly passing information about the war in Ukraine to US diplomats. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that he will ask Parliament in the coming week to increase penalties for those found guilty of corruption during wartime. Russia's investigative committee, which looks into serious crimes, said it had confirmed that the head of the Wagner mercenary group, Evgeny Prigozhin, was among the people killed in Wednesday's plane crash. After forensic testing, all 10 bodies recovered at the site had been identified, and their identities conformed to the manifest. The committee did not offer any details as to what might have caused the crash. A senior Ukrainian government official has confirmed the safe passage of a second vessel through the Black Sea from Ukraine's port of Odessa, after Russia's withdrawal from the UN deal, which had permitted the safe export of grain in July. And Russia's defense ministry said it had sent a fighter plane in response to a US Air Force reconnaissance drone over the Black Sea. The report said the drone had not breached Russia's state border. The First Minister has announced the transfer of the Clyde Mission Regeneration Programme to the Glasgow City region, as Scottish Government investment reaches more than £40 million. The migration from the Scottish Government administering the project takes place as talks with local leaders are to begin on formally recognising the 8 local authorities as a metro region to help drive growth, create more jobs, and deliver benefits to communities. The Clyde Mission has been working since 2020 to transform the Riverside corridor running from Lanarkshire through the city of Glasgow to the sea, with investment support for green space and renewable energy initiatives, as well as examining how more land can be identified for development. An additional £1.5 million will be dedicated to the Master Plan project, taking the Scottish Government's overall investment to more than £40 million. That includes £25 million of previously announced funding for cutting-edge heat decarbonisation projects that are being awarded to the partner local authorities. The Scottish Government says migration of the Clyde Mission is a prime example of their commitment to empowering and devolving more decision-making to all of Scotland's regions, along with continuing discussions being rolled out with all regional economic partnerships across Scotland. The Clyde Mission seeks to recognise and use the River Clyde as a national strategic asset. It focuses on using the land immediately adjacent to the river, within around 500 metres, as a national strategic asset, and follows the Clyde from its origins in the Lowther Hills through to the opening of the river between Gourock and Dunoon. The new funding will provide Glasgow City Region and Argyll and Bute Council with an investment over 3 years for the development of a master plan which will set out plans for stimulating growth of a sustainable well-being economy in the Clyde Mission area and wider city region. The First Minister Humza Yousaf said, "As Scotland's largest city, Glasgow's success is fundamental to our success as a nation, and our drive to create a well-being economy that is fair, green and growing. When Glasgow grows, Scotland grows, and by working in partnership with a stronger city region, we will make sure we realise its economic potential. We are transferring responsibility over running of the Clyde mission from the Scottish Government to empower the city region, helping to attract new investment, create jobs, and deliver prosperity and well-being for communities from Argyll to the Clyde Valley. I am committed to working with the leaders of Glasgow region to explore all options for how the Scottish Government can work with them to boost the regional economy, from our joint work with the UK Government on an investment zone in the city, to engaging with them directly on their aspirations to be formally recognised as a metropolitan region. He continued, the city region is brimming with economic potential, from life sciences to renewables, from space to tourism. This regional economy is one of great strength and diversity. By working in partnership with a stronger city region, we will make sure we realise that potential. Suella Braverman has said that the UK government will do whatever it takes if its plan to send asylum seekers to Rwanda is thwarted in Strasbourg, and she confirmed the government is considering fitting some migrants with electronic tags. In an interview with the BBC, the Home Secretary stepped up her attack on the European Court of Human Rights, calling it politicised and interventionist. She also suggested that the government would be prepared to pull out of the convention that governs the Strasbourg court if it blocked the Rwanda policy, despite there being opposition to such a move inside the cabinet. The government has taken the issue to the Supreme Court after a Court of Appeal judge ruled that it was unlawful to send asylum seekers to Rwanda. Speaking to Michelle Hussein on Radio 4's Today programme, Braverman said, "If we are thwarted by the courts or indeed by Strasbourg, then we will have to do whatever it takes, ultimately, to ensure that we can stop the boats." Asked if that meant leaving the European Convention on Human Rights, Braverman said, "My personal views are clear." Asked what the UK government's position was, she said, "We're very clear that the Rwanda scheme complies with our international obligations and that there's a path to stopping the boats, which is in conformity with the international regime. If we're thwarted in the courts, there must be no stone left unturned." Braverman also insisted that the Bibi Stockholm accommodation barge was safe for housing asylum seekers. That's after the Fire Brigades Union threatened legal action because it regards the vessel as a death trap. As I mentioned, the Home Office is considering fitting asylum seekers arriving in the UK with electronic tags, according to press reports. Officials are looking into tags as a way to prevent people who cannot be housed in limited detention sites from absconding, according to the reports. The Illegal Migration Act introduced a legal duty on the UK government to detain and remove those arriving in the UK illegally to Rwanda or another safe third country. However, as the Home Office provided accommodation is in short supply, officials are reported to have been tasked with finding alternatives. While the preferred solution is to increase the number of detention places, electronic tagging has been mooted, as has cutting off financial allowances to someone who fails to report regularly to the Home Office. A source from the department was reported to have said, "Tagging has always been something that the Home Office has been keen on and is the preferred option to withdrawing financial support, which would be legally difficult as migrants would be at risk of being left destitute." Home Office data this week showed that channel crossings topped 19,000 for the year so far, and of course that's despite Rishi Sunak's pledge to stop the boats. The asylum backlog has soared to a record high, with more than 175,000 people waiting for an initial decision on an asylum application by the end of June. Under Suella Braverman, the Home Office is intent on overseeing a huge increase in its detention capacity, which experts estimate will cost billions. Stephen Flynn has accused Sir Keir Starmer of betraying Scotland's workers after failing to support devolving employment laws to Holyrood. Mr Flynn's comments come after new figures reveal 109,000 people in Scotland are currently employed on zero-hours contracts, a practice described by the SNP Westminster leader as exploitative and outdated. Mr Flynn called on Sir Keir Starmer to commit to transferring employment powers to Holyrood. The Labour Party has come in for criticism for watering down their pledge to strengthen workers' rights, with opponents in Scotland accusing Starmer of being willing to abandon his principles to get into power. Commenting, the SNP's Westminster leader Stephen Flynn MP said, Keir Starmer's refusal to devolve employment laws to Holyrood betrays the needs of Scotland's workers. Mr Flynn said that over 100,000 workers in Scotland are at the mercy of exploitative and outdated zero-hours contracts. He said, we know that the best way to protect those workers is to ensure employment protection rights apply equally to all. But we now know that Labour stands ready to abandon their pledge to introduce such protections. He added, given that they can't be trusted to improve employment rights, Starmer must commit to transferring employment powers to Holyrood so that the SNP can offer real change and real hope to Scotland's workers. People across Scotland are being asked to suggest ways of increasing local control over decision-making. The second phase of the Democracy Matters national conversation will give people the opportunity to come together in their communities to imagine how new and inclusive democratic processes can best help their town, village or neighbourhood. Community groups can guide local discussions by using the consultation document, which covers a variety of themes, including powers, representation, accountability, and participation. People previously said it was crucial to get these things right. Funding is available to help with the cost of hosting events. To mark the start of the second phase, the Community Wealth Minister, Tom Arthur, and the Local Government Employment Minister, Joe Fitzpatrick, visited the Linlithgow Community Development Trust. Mr Arthur said, the Scottish Government is encouraging people across the country to come together and talk about local involvement in our democratic processes. We believe more decisions should be taken locally to better reflect the aspirations of our diverse communities. The Nisga'a LISIMS Government, NLG, and National Museums of Scotland have announced that the House of Nice Jowl Memorial Pole will return home to the Nass Valley this September in a historic moment for reconciliation. The rematriation of the pole is the result of a year-long discussion and close collaboration between the Nisga'a Nation and the museum. The term rematriation reframes the concept of repatriation by grounding the process of recovering belongings in Indigenous law and is more closely in alignment with the Nisga'a matrilineal society. Following months of preparatory work, a delegation of family members and supporters from the Nisga'a LISIMS government has travelled to the National Museum of Scotland in Edinburgh to oversee the start of the return. A closed spiritual ceremony was held today to prepare the pole for its journey home. The delegation included Sim Ugit Nice Jowl, Chief Earl Stevens, Siggy Dimnak Nofs Jowett, Dr. Amy Parent, Shauna Mackay, Sim Ugit Duke, Chief William Moore, Teresa Schober, who's the Nisga'a Museum Curator and Director, and Lax Yi, Bobby Clark, the Director of Communications and Intergovernmental Relations. The 37-foot-high hand-carved pole will be transported to Terrace, British Columbia, and then driven in a family procession to the Nisga'a village of Laff Galtsap in the Nass Valley, where it will be housed at the Nisga'a Museum. A public arrival ceremony will be held at the Nisga'a Museum on September the 29th, with the pole still enclosed within its protective box, with a Nisga'a feast to follow. The pole will be raised in the following days and available for the public to view later in October. The memorial pole belongs to the House of Nice Jowl from the Ganada Frog clan in the Nisga'a Nation. In 1860, the House of Nice Jowl matriarch Joanna Moody commissioned the pole to be carved by a Nisga'a master carver, Oyi, to honour her family member Jowett. He was next in line to be chief. Jowett was also a warrior who died protecting his family and the Nisga'a Nation. The Cabinet Secretary for Constitutional, External Affairs and Culture, Angus Robertson MSP, said, "The great significance of the Nice Jowl Memorial Pole to the Nisga'a people and their community was made clear to me when I met their representatives last year, and I was pleased to have been able to provide the necessary ministerial consent to enable its return. In making these programmes, Broadcasting Scotland depends on the generosity of viewers and others who value our distinctive approach to news, current affairs and culture. Please help us to continue to make these programmes, to develop the station and to make new programmes for you. Our programmes will always be free to view, but if you can afford £5 a month, please consider becoming a Broadcasting Scotland supporter. Our need to reach our £30,000 target to pay our bills is still pressing. However, the generosity of our supporters has given us a little bit more. We have raised nearly £16,000 and we will be able to continue making programmes for now. But we do need to raise the remaining £14,000 really urgently. To everyone who has donated and to everyone who has signed up to make a regular monthly payment as a Broadcasting Scotland supporter, thank you very much. There are other ways in which you can contribute to our work. If you would like to volunteer to work with Broadcasting Scotland, either behind the scenes or in front of the cameras, or in any other way that helps our work and promotes the station, then please visit our website at www.broadcastingscotland.scot and send us a message there. You can find us on Twitter and Blue Sky at BroadcastScot. Please like and retweet us there. And you can also find us on Facebook by searching for Broadcasting Scotland. When you're watching us on YouTube, it would be great if you would like and subscribe to Broadcasting Scotland on that platform. We will be back at 7 p.m. sharp tomorrow evening for the next edition of Scotland at 7, so please come and join us then. I'd like to say thank you to everyone who has been watching Broadcasting Scotland this evening. On Saturday, we were in Dumfries to report on the SNP's South Scotland Independence Assembly. We filmed the speeches by the Scottish Government's Minister for Independence and by Humza Yousaf, the First Minister of Scotland. Here are those speeches and also reactions from some of the participants at the event.
So right from the get-go today, when I got here just at the back of 9, there was definitely some optimism, there was a buzz, there was folk that had smiles all over their faces. They were very happy to be here. This is like our first South Scotland Assembly. We've taken a wee while to get it organised, and we're very, very happy that not only has the First Minister chosen to accept the invite to come here, but we had Keith Brown first thing in this morning, so he's our deputy leader for the party. And we've also had Jamie Hepburn as well as other councillors, MSPs and people on their feet who are members who are presenting their ideas for what we need to do to increase the yes vote in the South Scotland region.
I think it's been absolutely fantastic. What a turnout. It's the very first regional assembly that we've arranged in Dumfries and Galloway. It's for the whole of the south of Scotland, you know, whether you're from South Lanarkshire, Borders, South Ayrshire, or anywhere apart from the Central Belt, because they seem to get all the conferences. So, no, it's been an absolute fantastic turnout.
How do you think the day's been going so far?
Oh, well, great, yeah. I've just arrived. I was at a funeral this morning, one of my friends. It was a biker funeral, 200 bikes, so we always pay our respects, but I'm really glad to be able to come down. Looking forward to this afternoon session.
How do you feel it's been going?
Yeah, it's been fine actually. I've enjoyed being there this morning. I'm actually looking forward to this afternoon to see what Jamie and Humza have got to say as well. So yeah, really enjoying the day. Glad we came.
Thank you very much, Siobhan. Friends, can I begin by thanking you for the opportunity to come along and be with you this afternoon for your regional assembly. This has been a chance, and I've been glad to be able to sit in and hear some of what was being discussed this morning. This is a chance, and you've been taking the full opportunity to come together to discuss the way forward for our party and for our movement. And just as we've been doing that here in the south of Scotland, that is activity that's been taking place the length and breadth of the country. Just a couple of weeks ago, I was at the Highlands and Islands, very pleased to be able to take part in the similar regional assembly that was being held there. I'll be at the West of Scotland Regional Assembly taking place next week. The strength of our party is its membership, and coming together at the length and breadth of the country to be able to do what we are at our very best when we do it, engaging in vibrant debate, is essential. And that, of course, includes on the best way forward as to how we achieve what we all joined the SNP for, and that is to make Scotland an independent country. And friends, as part of our work to do just that, I welcome the fact that we have a Minister for Independence. Now, you might expect me to say that as the holder of the office, and indeed as someone who's been campaigning for independence for a quarter of a century. I was hugely honoured to be asked to undertake that role. And I am excited to be tasked with discharging the responsibilities that come with it. But the creation of the role was significant in of itself. It serves as a clear reminder to anyone who requires to be reminded, and apparently there are a few, that we have a pro-independence government in Edinburgh, that we have a pro-independence majority parliament with a mandate to pursue independence. In case anyone missed it, the SNP won the Scottish Parliament election in 2021, and our opponents lost that election. We have a right to pursue independence. We have a right to pursue independence, and in fact we have a responsibility to pursue independence because the people in voting for us have asked us to do so. Now, you might have noticed though that's not gone down well with everyone. Indeed, my appointment itself has upset a few of our opponents. George Fawkes has been pleading to the Tory government in the House of Lords for my appointment to be reversed. We have the spectacle of an unelected member of the House of Lords declaring that the elected government of Scotland shouldn't take forward the mandate it secured from the people in a free and fair election. And he went further, taking to Twitter to imagine what the response might be if the Labour Party appointed a Minister for Socialism. Imagine that, indeed. The chances of that seem a somewhat remote prospect. We've also, you'll have noticed, upset Scotland's Governor-General, Alistair Jack of these parts. This is good. This is a bit like the pantomime. I'm going to come back and do more of this. Behind me, yeah. It's a dangerous game in politics when someone shouts they're behind you anyway. Anyway, so outraged was Mr. Jack that we should deign to do exactly what we said we would do when we contested and won the election. He has said that civil servants in Scotland should be banned from working with me. Well, I've got news for Alistair Jack, a man whose party has not won an election in Scotland for nearly 70 years. I'm not going away. The Scottish Government is not going away, the SNP isn't going away, and the cause of independence is not going to go away. And I have what I hope is a reassurance for you, contrary to Alistair Jack's expectation. The civil servants I work closely with continue to work to the Scottish Government's independence agenda. I've held a number of ministerial roles, and in all of those roles I have been able to rely on the professionalism of the Scottish Civil Service, and I can tell you I am still able to rely on that professionalism. So I am continuing to take forward the legitimate work of our Scottish Government in making the independence case, and I intend to do so until we have won that case. And that's the other important reason to have a Minister for Independence. Using the resources of government, working with the civil service, we are creating a series of prospectus papers through our Building a New Scotland activity to create a compelling vision of a more vibrant future for our country. Last year we laid out the first 3 of those papers focusing on independence for Scotland in the modern world, how we can renew Scottish democracy through independence, and how we can create a stronger economy with independence. That enabled us to reflect on the fact, just as the First Minister laid out at our convention in Dundee, that all comparator countries around Scotland, those nations of a similar size, the Republic of Ireland, Denmark, Norway, Finland, are wealthier, healthier, happier and fairer than our society. So in answering the question then, why not Scotland, the answer is clear. It's because we're not independent. It's because we're not independent yet. So working with all of my ministerial colleagues, I will continue to take forward that work through the Building a New Scotland series to make clear the unanswerable case that Scotland's future can only be best served by us taking our place amongst the nations of the world as an independent country. And a clear demonstration that our activity continues has been the publication of our latest prospectus papers. I've got them here. Paper 4, Creating a Modern Constitution for an Independent Scotland, and Paper 5, Citizenship in an Independent Scotland. The first, or the fourth, I should say, of those papers, it was published in June. And we set out our proposition that we should have our rights, the rights that each and every one of us in this room and across the rest of the country should be guaranteed in a written constitution for an independent Scotland. Consider the alternative. The UK is an outlier amongst the world's nations, one of a very small number that has no properly written and codified constitution. Instead, it works in a system of trust, one where the people expect the UK government to act responsibly. Well, we've seen how that has gone. Parties at Downing Street in the midst of a global pandemic, because people lost their loved ones. Former Prime Minister who lied to the House of Commons, and a government, a UK government, that's seeking to strip away the well-established rights that each of us should enjoy. Our proposition is that we should be like the overwhelming majority of nations in the world and set out the basic rights that each person should enjoy in the written constitution that cannot be removed on the whim of a temporary government. Rights that are laid out in the European Convention on Human Rights. Contrast that to the Tories who want to abolish the Human Rights Act, a proposition that we should enshrine into our constitution, that where they require to, workers should have the right to strike where they feel they have no other option. Contrast that to the Tories with their pernicious Trade Union Act. Our position is that in our written constitution there will be a constitutional right to a system of healthcare available free at the point of need. Contrast that to the Tories who are itching to privatise our national health service. This is a vivid way in which we can demonstrate the tangible benefits of independence. And just last month, we published that fifth prospectus paper that I mentioned a few moments ago, setting out who will be identified as a citizen in independent Scotland and how people will be able to become citizens of an independent Scotland. That's you in this room and those we want to welcome to Scotland. There will be no hostile environment for people coming to Scotland akin to the Tory vision for the UK, but a welcoming and receptive one. And of course, with independence and Scottish citizenship, we will be able to secure our own Scottish passport. Now, I quite like that in of itself, but it has meaning, because it's not going to be the Brexiteer holy grail of a blue passport, but it's going to be a burgundy Scottish passport that will be ready to go for when we take our place again in the family of European nations and give us back the rights to be able to freely travel across the EU. Rights we lost. Rights that we, of course, lost when we were ripped out against our will. Now, friends, I've given you some detail there, and I've done it for a reason, because the detail in our prospectus papers, and one we've published and the ones that are to come, make the case. They show that independence isn't an abstract end in itself. It's the route to a better society here in Scotland. So my request of you is that you look at these papers, you consume the information, and you take the detail and the information within it out to the wider public. Make the case to your friends, make the case to your family, make the case to your neighbours, and especially make the case to those who are yet to be convinced. So use the papers as part of your campaign. Use them as part of presenting a more hopeful, optimistic and positive future for our country, a future that can only be secured with independence. And I believe that optimistic case is one that will resonate here in the south of Scotland just as it will anywhere in our country. But I know that in much of this region you do face a tough challenge, a challenge that's different from the one that I and others of my colleagues do. Here in Dumfriesshire and along the road, in the rest of this council area, in Galloway, along the road in Roxburgh, Selkirkshire, Peeblesshire and Berwickshire, you're up against the Tories. I've been taking the time to speak to a few old friends, and many of you know that my wife is a borderer. So I've campaigned alongside some of you, and I understand some of the specific questions that you face, not as well as you do. Of course, no one knows their own area better than themselves, but I know some of the issues that prevail in the south of Scotland. Questions around the border, for example. Well, I want to assure you that in relation to that important issue, our prospectus papers to come, as we take them forward, will focus on that matter. But let's be clear, and we've already said this, once we are independent, we will continue to operate in a common travel area with the rest of these islands. That's not an outlandish notion. That's not an extraordinary concept. That's not a radical idea. That's the state of arrangements that the UK and Ireland have enjoyed for over a century. So take no nonsense from the fear-mongering that you'll hear from Mr Jack and others in the Conservative Party about border guards and a hard border. It'll be just as much in the interest of the remainder of the United Kingdom as it will for Scotland to have a common travel area. And the message we deploy in the rest of the country also applies just as much here. We are in the midst of a cost of living crisis. People are struggling. And whilst, of course, this is impacting in many parts of the world, nowhere more does it impact here in the UK. Why is that? Well, nowhere else has had the pernicious welfare reform agenda of the Tories impacting the most vulnerable in our society. Nowhere else has had the disaster zone of Brexit, which has harmed our economy and damaged businesses here in the south of Scotland and the length and breadth of the country. Nowhere else has had the chaos of a Liz Truss quasi-quartine mini-budget that has put interest rates through the roof, increasing people's mortgages. Friends, we don't just face a cost of living crisis in Scotland. We face a cost of Westminster crisis in Scotland. So tell everyone that you know, when you're on the doorstep, only independence can protect us from the maliciousness and the incompetence that has exacerbated the cost of living crisis people in the south of Scotland are facing. And we have the perfect opportunity to get that message out as we continue our Summer of Independence campaign. I know that you've been out in your communities. I've been out in mine. The First Minister, our party leader, who will be with us shortly, I hope. Otherwise, I'm going to have to extemporise a little. He's been leading from the front. He's been out and about across the country, pressing the flesh, speaking to people, making the case. And the response he's been getting, the response I've been getting, the response that I'm sure all of you have been getting, has been I'm not going to wrap up yet, First Minister. I've got a bit more to say. The response we've been getting has been a positive one. So our opponents write us off at our peril. But we do face a challenging task immediately before us. There's a by-election in Rutherglen and Hamilton right now. And that's going to be a difficult and challenging task. But as a party, we relish nothing more than a challenging task or a tough contest. Hamilton in 1967, Glasgow Govan in 1988, Glasgow East in 2008. Let's mobilise that by-election machine that we know the SNP can be, and let's make sure we win in Rutherglen and Hamilton West. So please keep doing the great work you're doing locally, but also please make every effort to get along and help our fantastic candidate, Katie Loudon, secure a win in Rutherglen and Hamilton West too. And let's use that victory there as a springboard into the general election campaign ahead of us too. At our Independence Convention in Dundee, the First Minister was clear that the first line in our manifesto for the election ahead will be the simple and straightforward declaration: vote SNP for Scotland to become an independent country. I don't know about you, friends, but I like that proposition. I'm ready and I'm raring to go to take that message out to the people of Scotland. So it's our responsibility to be out and about in every city, every town, every village, every community, every street, every doorstep, to make that positive case for independence, to win the case and secure the trust and support of the people of Scotland. And make no mistake, we need independence now more than we have ever done before. Friends, devolution has enabled us to make positive changes for the people of Scotland. Your SNP government has helped lift 90,000 children out of poverty with policies like the groundbreaking child payment. Your SNP government has, over its lifetime in office, built 112,000 affordable homes. We've reintroduced free university education. We've put in place free prescription charges. We've introduced the baby box. All real and genuine achievements made possible by having devolution and, of course, by having the SNP in office. And we must continue to fend off any attacks we face in devolution by the contemptuous UK government. And make no mistake, we are seeing those attacks more and more. The Internal Market Act, the supposed levelling up agenda, the direct challenges to legislation agreed by our national parliament, all of it is designed to undermine and erode the progress we have made here in Scotland. So we will continue to protect our Scottish democracy, but we also have to recognise, and we should make this part of our campaign, that there is susceptibility to attack of these achievements under the current devolution settlement. It's a limited settlement. Only with independence can we protect the advances we have made, and only with independence can we go further to create the kind of fairer Scotland we all want to see. So in case there's any doubt, the Scottish Government's position and our party's position is that no form of constitutional change short of independence is one we will actively campaign for. We were founded on the premise that Scotland should be independent, and that's what we fight for. We've work to do, but each and every member of our party and each and every independent supporter across our movement has a vital role to play in securing our nation's independence. We can do this together. Today is your chance to feed into that process of creating a winning campaign. So let's get to it. Thanks very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much to all of you for taking time out of your weekend, out of your afternoon today to listen to me, but more importantly, to contribute. And that's what the regional assemblies are all about. This is not my first regional assembly. I suspect it won't be necessarily my last either. And we've had these fantastic regional assemblies right across the country because that is exactly what I promised during that election contest, that we wanted to hear from not hundreds, thousands of our members right across the country, so you help to inform us about the direction going forward. And even the regional assemblies I've not been able to attend. It's been incredible getting the feedback and some excellent ideas, and I've got no doubt our South of Scotland Regional Assembly will come forward with some significant and really good ideas too. So my gratitude, because these things don't happen by themselves, my gratitude to every single person that has helped to put these together, from those in the local branches and indeed from some of the support, no doubt, that you've had from headquarters as well, but particularly from the local regional reps. My thanks to all of you for putting today together. The South of Scotland, in my experience, and I've been in this party for almost 20 years, 19 years, and any time I've travelled to the South of Scotland, be that Dumfries and Galloway, be that, of course, in our Scottish borders, that right across the South of Scotland, there is one thing that you can absolutely say unequivocally about our SNP members here. They are absolute grafters. They are absolute grafters. In fact, you wouldn't have managed to get the results, often in the face of some hostility and some difficulty. You wouldn't have been able to advance the cause of our party if it wasn't for that graft. It didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen because of just national swing. It happened because many of you have worked hard for many, many years. I see some very well-kent faces in the audience that have worked extremely hard over the years to make sure that we have a solid foundation here in the South of Scotland to build upon. And that huge array of SNP talent is here to see, whether it's our colleagues from local council. I can see a number of our local councillors here, whether it's our fantastic SNP reps in the region. I have a number of them, as you know, from the South of Scotland in government, Mary McCallan, Eleanor Whittam, Siobhan Brown, Paul McLennan as well. Their areas touching upon the South of Scotland. And my thanks to the indefatigable Emma Harper as well, and her team, who have done an excellent job. An excellent job in representing the region, and Emma and I were together. Good, almost 3-hour drive over to the east and Eyemouth just last week as well. So to say she's covering a fair patch, I think it's fair to say you are certainly putting in the mileage, and I'm really grateful to Emma and the team for all the hard work that they do. So I wanted to pick up, and actually I don't actually want to speak for terribly long. I want to make sure I've got plenty of time for some Q&A so I can hear from you and hopefully be able to respond back to some of the questions that you've got. But I want to pick up on some key issues, if I may. One is that it's so important to, first of all, recognise that even in the face of, let's be frank and honest with each other, some of the most difficult weeks and months our party has faced, support for independence is absolutely rock solid. And support, of course, for the SNP remains not just high, we continue to lead in virtually every single poll that comes out. Now, we're not complacent about that. We want to make sure we widen that gap. But you have to look at it in the context within which we are. Relentless attacks upon the SNP and upon the Scottish Government. But yet, support for our cause, support for the cause of independence, absolutely rock solid. And why is that? That's because people are crying out for a real alternative. What they see in front of them, what they experience every day in their lives, the difficulties they face, the challenges they face, the suffering too many of our fellow Scots face. They're crying out for that alternative. And don't tell me a Westminster that is led by Keir Starmer is any alternative. Whether it's Westminster Blue or Westminster Red, that's no choice, no alternative for the people of Scotland. Are you telling me that the real change, as they describe themselves, is going to come from a Keir Starmer who believes in retaining the 2-child limit? Are you telling me real change is going to come from the man who believes in remaining outside of Europe, even though Scotland voted to stay within the European Union? Are you telling me real change comes from the man who wants to keep the bedroom tax? Are you telling me real change is going to come from the man who said you can apply the rape clause fairly? You're telling me change is going to come from there? Not a chance. And so it's absolutely right that we point out the various feelings, the many feelings of Westminster, whether it's, as I say, Westminster blue or Westminster red. But my friends, that in itself is not enough. We also have to demonstrate what we are doing, but importantly, what we could do with the full powers of a normal, independent nation. Think of what we're doing within the confines of devolution, and Jamie was absolutely right to talk about the fact that that devolution is under sustained attack by a party who, let's be frank, opposed the creation of the Scottish Parliament, and many of them frankly still oppose devolution to this day. Lord Frost, of course, letting that cat particularly out of the proverbial bag. And we are under sustained attack, but even with devolution under sustained attack, we've managed to achieve, look, 90,000 children estimated to be lifted out of poverty because of our actions, including the game-changing Scottish Child Payment. Look what we've managed to achieve when it comes to affordable housing, when it comes to local projects here in the south of Scotland, whether it's, of course, here more locally in Dumfries, or whether it's, of course, in the south of Scotland, whether it's in the Borders, through Borders Railway. We have achieved so much, and we have to keep reminding people not just of what we have achieved, but look at the country we could be if we had the powers of independence. What could we achieve? Well, you don't have to look particularly far. Look at countries not too far away from us, of comparable size to Scotland. Look at Ireland, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Austria. Compare them to the UK. Wealthier, more productive, fewer people in poverty, higher economic growth than the UK. Then why not Scotland? Why not Scotland? With the renewable potential we have, with the world-class universities we have, with the world-class food and drink we have, with the life sciences we have, with the agriculture sector we have, with all of the abundant resources that other countries would bite our hands off for. Why not Scotland? And you should take that message to every single doorstep in the south of Scotland, whether it's, as I say, in Dumfries and Galloway, the Borders, right across the south of Scotland. Take that message to every single door. And you ask people and tell them, give them the facts, because we have the winning argument. And ask them, why not Scotland? Because ultimately, if we have the powers in our hands, think of the potential we would have, not just to reduce poverty, but to eradicate it. That's the prize. To unleash that huge potential. And to continue to show moral leadership. Just had Secretary Kerry, the US President's special envoy on climate here in Scotland. He couldn't be more enthusiastic. He couldn't have lavished more praise on the leadership that Scotland has shown and the Scottish Government has shown. Let me pay a tribute in particular to my predecessor for some of the great work that she did in showing that global leadership, Scotland's global leadership on the world stage. And just think of the summer that we've had, the visual impact of the climate emergency there for every single person to see. Our planet quite literally on fire. And not only that, of course, we've seen the catastrophe, the loss of life because of extreme weather events right across the world. The UN saying that July, the hottest month in human history. And the UK government's response to come up, I think in Margaret Thatcher's Rolls Royce or something stupid like that, to come up to Scotland, sit in that Rolls Royce, come up to Scotland and grant 100 new oil and gas licenses. Our children would never forgive us. They should never forgive us if we don't show the leadership on the climate emergency that the world demands. And we could do so much more if we had the powers in our own hands. Think of how we could reform the energy market so it priced fairly renewables. Think of what we could do if we had the tax and incentive powers to unleash, as I say, that abundance of renewable potential that we have. So we have to, of course, point out Westminster's failings, and we should do that. We should not be shy in doing that. And we'll do what we can, of course, in the Holyrood Chamber, or of course, our colleagues will do it at local level, in council, and of course, all the various spheres of government. But we should also do that on the doorstep, because that's where it's won. People ask me often, what's the biggest asset that your party has? The biggest asset is our members. Without a shadow of a doubt, you are our biggest assets. And yes, other political parties can pull in all the corporate donors in the world, but we will rely on our 75,000 members in order to help to drive our cause forward. And it's incumbent upon you, I would say it's a duty upon you, to make sure that you are taking that case to every household in the south of Scotland. And tell them what we've done locally. Tell them that it's through our intervention, through our budget of this financial year, that we provided NHS Dumfries and Galloway with over £18 million increased investment compared to the year before. Tell them about the 5,000 baby boxes that have been delivered to families in Dumfries and Galloway. Tell them about, and remind them about the £350 million of investment that we put into the Borders Railway. Tell them about the over 3,000 children that we have helped through mitigating Conservative policies in the Borders, or the over 2,000 children that we've helped in Dumfries and Galloway. Tell them about the investments that we've made and remind them, because 16 years in government, sometimes people need reminded about what we've done over those 16 years. I was knocking a door, it was in Ardler in Dundee, and there's a woman saying, well, me and my husband, we work, what do you do for us? And he said, my children here, I want to make sure that they're helped by a future government. I said, what do your children do? She said, they study in university. I said, do they pay any tuition? She went, no. I said, well, there's an example of what we do. And we've got to remind people about the benefit, because when the SNP wins, then there's no doubt at all in my mind that Scotland wins. And that is the point. And I'm going to try to end on this so I can take your questions and, of course, your comments. Because that is the point in this general election. I wish I could be standing here and telling you the shortcut to achieve our independence. I can't. Because if the shortcut was there, we would have figured it out by now, and trust me, we'd be independent by now. And of course, you know this as well as I do, that the more likely it is that we would win that referendum, and I'm telling you now, I've got every confidence we would win that referendum, the less likely they are to give it to us. And that's why we have to mobilise the power of the people. That is why ensuring that we have that consistent majority, not 52% one day, 48% another day, but that consistent majority for independence. And you don't have to wait for a date for a referendum. You don't have to wait for the starting gun to be fired. It's already been fired. We need to get out there, mobilise, grow that support for independence. But we also have to use every single opportunity we get to demonstrate just how popular the proposition for independence is. And of course, the next general election gives us that national opportunity to be able to say loudly and clearly, to send a message that we don't believe that Westminster, that the status quo is serving the people of Scotland well. That actually we will put on page 1, on line 1, that simple proposition. Vote for the SNP is a vote for Scotland to become independent. And if we win that general election, then we will, of course, begin that negotiation with the UK government on how to give that democratic effect. And we have to make sure that people understand that the next general election is about the issue of independence. And yes, it is entirely relevant to the cost of living crisis, to the Westminster cost of living crisis that's been created. It's entirely relevant to our public services. Of course, our budget being cut year on year by UK government consistently over a number of years. It's entirely relevant to our economy that has suffered as a result not just of the harshest and hardest Brexits, but also, of course, because of complete economic, financial incompetence and mismanagement by the Conservative government. So let's make sure that nobody is left in any doubt about the fact that the general election, front and centre, will be about the issue of independence. And we can only get that message out there with your help. The seagulls are telling me to get a move on, so I'm going to hurry up. We can only get that message, we can only make sure that message gets to every doorstep with your help. I promise you, I will do my bit, especially every Thursday at First Minister's Questions, whenever I'm interviewed by our friends in the media, I will do my bit. Yeah, I know, I said that on purpose. I will do my bit, as will Jamie, and as will all the members of the government. But we cannot do it without you. And therefore, I need all of you to make sure that you have the arguments in your hands and that you have the drive. Because I can promise you, without any hesitation, without a single word of a lie, that independence is now closer than it ever has been. And that is why, of course, that final hurdle might feel like the most difficult, but it is that final hurdle that we are on. And it is closer than ever. And remember, this is a journey that did not begin with you and I. We are perhaps the latest custodians of this cause, but it has been going on for not decades, but for hundreds of years. And we are the latest. So
we may not have begun it, but by God, we should finish the job. Thank you very much.
It's brilliant, yeah, really positive and really good for members to have their say and to be able to meet together after such a long time and take the party forward. Do you have anything to say?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's really important that all our members across the south of Scotland are valued, and they've got an opportunity to come together. So it's fantastic, and we've got some fantastic key prominent people who are elected in the south, and actually being able to just get the south on the agenda and people being felt valued is so important to take forward the message.
I'm delighted to be here in Dumfries, room full of hundreds of SNP activists that are raring to go, but also, really importantly, engaging with me as a leader of the SNP to tell me what they think our strategy should be to advancing our cause of independence and other arguments that we should be deploying on the doorsteps on a range of issues, from the climate emergency to tackling poverty and everything in between. So it's been a really good session this morning and this afternoon, and that is the promise I made, that I would listen to our members. It's not going to be a top-down strategy for me as leader of the SNP. I'm going to make sure that the ideas to advance the cause of independence are taken from the bottom up, and together I have every confidence that if we make sure we take that message to every doorstep, we will win our independence.
So First Minister did a speech to the auditorium, and then after that he did an impromptu question and answer session, which was absolutely fantastic. And then following that, he was able to go and speak to people in the front row, get some selfies, and it was absolutely amazing. The First Minister has demonstrated how open and engaging he is, and how he wants to engage with the people widely across Scotland and hear what they want to see as differences or changes that need to be made for SNP to go forward and secure independence.